serve me.
Yes, he did. Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Well, thank you very much for joining us for this edition of Donnybrook. Great to have you aboard and lots to talk about. So let's get right to the introduction, starting with 50% of the Jennifer and Wendy show on KTRS, Wendy Wiese. Along with Mr. Bill McClellan, 100% of his column, and the #1 Chicago Cubs fan with us from STLtoday.com and St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Ray Hartmann from RawStory.com, the Riverfront Times, and the Big 550 KTRS. And Rock Chalk Jayhawk, there he is, national champion and alum of KU, Alvin Reid from the St. Louis American.
Hey, national champs.
And what city is KU from?
That'd be Lawrence, Kansas.
Yes, right, yes.
Right, you know, we are the University of Kansas Jayhawks. We are not the Kansas City Jayhawks. Thank you, President of the NCAA, Mark Emmert.
Well, having never made a mistake, nonetheless, I am very sympathetic for those who occasionally do. Hey, congratulations to Amy Shaw, our 9PBS CEO and President, who is now going to be into the St. Louis Media Hall of Fame. It was announced this week, so congratulations, Amy. There she is. We're all proud of you, and looking forward to that big celebration. At the same time, we're sad to announce that Michael Neidorff, the longtime CEO of Centene, someone we talked about a lot on this program the past couple of years, and has died. And I'll tell you what, he took a company from nothing to what is now the largest publicly traded company in St. Louis, number 24 on the Fortune 500. The Centene name is all over St. Louis as a great benefactor to charitable causes, and so our thoughts and prayers are with the Neidorff family, his wife Naomi and his son Peter. Okay, we're going to start with you, Alvin, on our program tonight as we talk about the state of Missouri is in a rare position because it has maybe more by the end of June than $2.5 billion in surplus. So it's a nice position for lawmakers in Jefferson City to be in, but they can't decide what to do with it. Some people want to put in a rainy day fund. Others want a $500 tax credit for all people who file their taxes. Some want it for teachers, others for in-home workers. What's your opinion here?
Well, first, and really important, Bill, don't put your hat on the table because my wife will come through the TV camera.
Oh, that is bad luck.
It's bad luck.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So you're freaking out a lot of people.
Hat on the table?
Yeah. All right. Okay.
And no shoes on the table either.
Yeah, I've heard them all, but that's
the Cubs fan. You can't take them anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. So
maybe that's why we didn't win for 100 years.
Too many hats on the table.
So I honestly, all right, as much as there's so many things we could like put some money toward, I am one that for some reason, like, am not mad at them for the rainy day fund, or let's keep a sizable amount here, at least for a year. Let's see where we're shaking out a year from now or whatever. I don't think there should be just a huge rush to spend all this money. That being said, I'm not for the $500 per person kind of like give it away either. So there's got to be some happy medium. But I'm not mad at them for just, you know, like inventing reasons to hit this fund.
If you think of it like a house, and please forgive the simplicity of my argument here, we have to first work on some curb appeal, truly. If anybody is traveling through this state, I would just keep traveling as fast as my little wheels would carry me. This is, as Charlie has pointed out through his program, we have become a dump. Our roadways, our highways, our byways are disgraceful. So that something has to be taken care of. I have dislocated my shoulder driving through some of these potholes as well. True. So could we just at least make a few cosmetic, alterations, and then we'll deal with the plumbing and all of the other issues that we have to deal with as homeowners. But I think some of these things are very immediately, I think they should be required to be taken care of immediately.
I look at it a little differently. First of all, we're being governed by people who hate government, which is not a good thing. And state government has certain fundamental constitutional responsibilities to the taxpayers. One of them is education. It's the first one. And certainly has a role to play in healthcare, Medicaid expansion, for example, and is the idea that we are thinking about anything other than at least starting to correct the fact that we're 50th in the state, or have been, in our average pay for state workers, which is in competition with other states, that we're near 50 in education and corrections and so forth. I think that this, they don't have to go crazy, but Mike Parsons' budget was surprisingly a reasonable starting point coming from a Republican governor, and he can't even get these anti-government Republicans to start with his proposal. So I think we've got to take this opportunity, and keep in mind other states are getting surpluses too. Part of it from the infrastructure effort, some of it from COVID money, and so they've got to understand they've got fundamental responsibilities to teachers and others in the state, and students, obviously. So I think it needs to start there.
Well, at least we should discuss it. I mean, the idea of giving everybody $500 and just being done with the whole thing that makes no sense to me. I mean, I'm not sure if beautification is the #1 thing, or education, but we should at least discuss it instead of just giving the money away.
Well, now, let me ask you, Bill, and I agree. I think nursing home workers deserve some more money. I think the teachers, they're the lowest paid in the country. They need more money. But why is it wrong for the state to give out $500, but when Mayor Jones did it or President Biden did it, it was okay to send out checks to everybody?
Well, I didn't think it was very smart for Mayor Jones or President Biden just to give money away without any very few safeguards. I mean, there was a little bit on the national stuff and a little bit with Mayor Jones. You had to be poor to get the money, but I think we can do better than just.
Okay, now we got to move along.
But it's not just lawmakers who hate making laws. I think they seem to be terrified of making decisions. They are averse to decision making, and that's a bigger problem.
We have a couple more weeks. We'll be able to discuss this on a future occasion. Can you be brief? Really, can you?
Okay. Sure.
Okay, let's move on. Only in the interest of time, because we have a lot of topics.
You're the boss.
And I want to get to you on the next topic, Ray, because the Circuit Attorney's Office is up against the police department again. But here's the case this time. March 19th, a couple of police officers claim that their car was almost carjacked by a guy in South St. Louis. And so they pressed charges, armed criminal action, fleeing a police officer. It went to the Circuit Attorney's Office, and no charges were pressed. And today, or rather this week on Tuesday, Chris Hinckley, the chief warrant officer for Kim Gardner, had a press conference. And using heavily redacted videotape, not sharing all of it, said this shows that the crime was not committed, and we're dropping all of the charges. Meanwhile, for the first time in memory, both police unions have come to the aid and the defense of the police officer, saying, no, no, no. If you share all the video, you'll see that indeed there was armed criminal action here. What are you thinking here?
I think we got the biggest story is that nationally and internationally, we got coverage about a carjacking that actually did not happen, okay? And people, as if we needed it as a community, we've got headlines. There was one in, I think, the Daily Mail, woke prosecutor won't bring charges against carjackers. And in fact, the idea that police cars are getting carjacking is a bad look, and it didn't happen.
Well, we're not sure
we
that
don't know that yet, Ray. That's the whole point.
No, excuse me, they did not get carjacked. The question is, and
well, they claim they were attempted hijack.
Well, but that's not how the story was played. It was played. But anyway, here's the deal. I think what happened was that, and I'm not saying who's lying or anything. I do think they.
Yes, you are.
No, will you stop? I'm saying they overcharged this case, which cops do on a fairly regular basis. I think the circuit attorney handled it properly, and the circuit attorney reacted to, once again, being attacked in a case where they did handle this properly. And they could not have proven a carjacking case. And I think
they were say that with so little of the video.
Because I saw the video.
You saw what was released. They are saying that there is more that would change the story and the perspective. So that to me, it's way too early for you to say.
I think they overcharged the cases.
I just wonder,
how
does it just keeps coming to this? How does it come to this? This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
You mean all parties involved can't sit in a room and just say, no, look, seriously. I don't want to charge this person. And, you know, like, we can go to this video and I can make you look bad, and then you'll come back and you'll try to make me look bad, and I'm the worst prosecutor ever, on and on and on. This is not good for the city. This is not good for anybody, but yet nobody can find any kind of high road between that office and the police department. And both parties are responsible. I'm not blaming just one. And also, both the unions came together in defense of the poor officer that had to deal with Joe Vaccaro that day.
That's an interesting point, because that videotape was released when Joey V was pulled over for going 76 into 60, you know, and there's that controversy. They released the tape. So why don't the police and the circuit attorney release to the public all the video that they have?
I agree. And, you know, someone like me I'm one of those people who just tends not to believe Kim Gardner, even though I know that the police are guilty of crimes themselves sometimes. I just don't trust Kim Gardner. But here, if there's a video, let us see the whole video and then make up our minds. I mean, maybe Ms. Gardner's telling the complete truth. Maybe the police are. I mean, we don't know.
Well, I think I would lean her way.
Well, the perception is that the circuit attorney is only interested in prosecuting police officers.
But that's not true.
That is, but
no, that's how the police. The majority of police feel that way. But I'm just saying, like, this is one of those. Just look at her, you know, in her office, now her directly, and said, like, you know, why lie when the truth will suffice? You know, you're going out of your way to create the situation that ultimately could make you look a lot worse than the police. So why?
Alvin's point.
So I think she's telling the truth.
Alvin's point is right, but it's 4 years old. I mean, this has been going on since the day Kim Gardner was first elected, the first time, on a campaign promise to reform police. And they have, at least in her telling, they wouldn't. One of the interesting things they wouldn't, according to her, and maybe she's not telling the truth, was the issue of whether they would even help her prosecute the Grimes case, which led to all kinds of stuff. So
they denied that.
I know, that's what I'm saying. They denied.
And the chief of police, that was John Hayden, who denied it, and I believe Jimmy Edwards.
I'm just saying that it goes back that far.
Okay, well, speaking of the police, I want to ask you, Bill, about a story that was in ProPublica, written in part by one of your former colleagues, Jeremy Kohler. And in this story, he took a look at what are called justifiable homicides. That is, when you shoot somebody who's committing a dangerous crime and the homicide is justified. And they're not counted in the city's homicide total. So he says, in the 10 years preceding 2019, the city of St. Louis averaged 6. And then in 2020, it went up to 17, and then 21, or rather 22 in 2021. Meanwhile, Kansas City, which has almost 200,000 more people than we do, 0. Chicago, which has 9 times the population of the city of St. Louis, 0. So some people are wondering, are the justifiable homicides being inflated because it makes our homicide numbers look better?
You know, I don't know. I mean, it shows that the uniform standards of reporting aren't uniform at all. Different cities do it different ways. But, you know, even if you took those 22 homicides and added them on, the justifiable homicides, and added them on to the regular homicides, we still had a decrease last year. I mean, it was a bad year like it always is, but it was much better than the previous year. So I thought it was an interesting story, but I didn't see any real significance or any dark planning by anybody on it.
I agree, and you know, I'll defend the police on this one, because it's almost we have this narrative, and no one wants to minimize the crime problem in the city of St. Louis. Everybody gets it, and it's a tragedy, and it continues. But there is always a fixation on this homicide number as if it was the only crime problem. And there's actually overall violent crime is a much more common, and we don't even keep score of that. Bill's right, there's all kinds of uneven reporting that makes it hard to compare cities. And, you know, I think you can't blame the police, you know, for you know, we don't give them credit when it goes down. And I just think that we fixate too much on homicides.
There were 2 other cities that had similar circumstances to St. Louis, so maybe we do our, you know, things right. But, you know, this state, it trickles down. We got to go for your guns mentality. And if the police said, like, hey, look, they threw down in the middle of the street, okay, and one of them ended up dead, you know, and the prosecutor's office and the police said, like, justifiable, shameful, but justifiable. Right.
Exactly.
So you know.
I thought about that, but don't forget Kansas City's in this state too, and they had 0. And I thought,
I mean, that's a good point.
I thought it was interesting that The police officers themselves had recommended that they be classified as homicide, but then when it got to certain levels in the department and then there was a consultation with the circuit attorney's office, they reversed it and went to justifiable homicide. And the experts interviewed by Kohler said, no, 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 it's whatever the police says. It's not what the circuit attorney or anyone else says. If the police officer says it's a homicide, then it's listed as a homicide for the police statistics.
Okay.
So,
all right.
all right.
I mean, all kind of, right. Lots of stuff happens between I'm a police officer on the street and to when it gets to the point where somebody's going to get prosecuted and all that. It has gone through all kind of channels because all kind of people with all kind of names be in jail right now if the police could just say,
Can
hey.
we even compare ourselves to Kansas City? I mean, really?
Not really, no, I agree.
I don't think we can.
Right.
We're in the same state,
Kansas
but I
City-
think that's where the similarities end.
I need to look it up, but I read the Kansas City Star a lot, and there's plenty of crime in Kansas City, and I'm concerned about it. And I don't know, again, the whole statistics. I will say we've got to stop thinking of ourselves in the city as the only place where there's a natural tension. I agree it's way out of hand, but there's an absolute natural tension between police departments writ large and circuit
I
attorneys
disagree.
that
I
have to
disagree.
prove.
I
No, they
disagree.
have different roles in the. What do you mean they have different roles?
I disagree.
Circuit attorneys have to be, prosecuting attorneys have to be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, and police officers
Ray,
all over.
she's
This is a
at the
case here, a case there, and other
forefront of
places.
the
Yeah.
progressive circuit attorneys movement, and so that separates her.
Well,
from
I mean, I'm not
many.
even going there. I'm
Yeah.
just saying there are places where they might be progressive, attorney, conservative, whatever, but they say, like, listen, none of us are going to be successful if we can't work together.
Right.
This city won't, I won't, we're chief, we better figure out a way to work together or we're both going to fail. And that's what's going on here, and I don't think it really does go on a lot.
And Wesley Bell's a progressive prosecutor, and there might be not a lot of love between Bell's office and the police,
county police.
but they're not at constant.
I
war.
get that, but
and
we're
by
not
the
the
way, I
only
just want
place
to say
that
a
happens.
quick word for Wesley Bell because he went after all those people who were dumping mattresses in Kinloch, and I thought that was a great deal. So hats off to him. Alvin, I want to ask you about Culver House. It's a 19th century architectural gem that's next to Powell Hall on Del Mar. However, the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra has a $100 million expansion plan, and that plan includes getting rid of Culver House. Now, there are preservationists like Andrew Weil from Landmarks and Michael Allen of Washington University who say that that will be a great architectural loss for the region and our, building heritage. What say you?
It pains me to say, because I see it when I'm there, but it's got to go. It has to go. I mean, it's right there in the footprint of the symphony, and it wants to expand, and they have an education center, and it's going to help a lot of kids, and it's going to help a lot of people that normally don't be involved with the symphony, and I don't want to be like the symphony PR person, but this one has just got to go.
Wrecking ball, huh?
Yeah,
Is it
pretty
Steve
much. Well, maybe
Smith
we
who
can get
wants
people
to move it? Is he the one who wants
Yes,
to
he
move
is.
it?
Yes.
Yes.
But that jeopardizes
Everything.
its place on the National Register of Historic Places. Can the symphony not work around Culver House? I mean,
I'm like
it
Alvin,
seems-
except I think it's got to stay. I'm
like-
sort of like you.
I would love-
I think
I
it
like
needs to stay.
Steve Smith's idea of taking it and moving it, and I know Andrew Wiles said that it loses its sense of place,
right.
but the building is still intact, and we can still look at the building and think, hey, that's a pretty neat.
But it couldn't be an
19th
annex
century-
or.
I don't
Yeah,
think so.
I'm with Wendy. I'd like to. Again, we haven't obviously
I'm
Yeah, with
excited
Alvin.
about
studied
your
this, but
renovation.
I
and-
think it'd be nice for the symphony to find something else to do. But
I think it's just unfortunately it's sitting in a place where it just has to go.
And I'd like to
just-
remind the
Well,
symphony that I
wow.
wanted them in the
You
Zoo
sound like
Museum
Mr.
District
Potter.
100 years
I
ago.
know. I feel so bad about it. But also,
nah.
once again, here's this house been sitting here all these years, and you
Unloved.
knew the day was coming that the symphony
Right.
is going to want to, move this on. So why the sudden love?
I just-
Because a wrecking ball is forever.
I mean, pretty much. I like that one.
Can't go back.
No, Wendy's right. I mean, our architectural heritage is the one thing that no other
Yeah.
city can claim.
Well, if you did
And
it
we
board by
yeah.
board,
That's
like
why
the
I'm-
Churchill church that they moved over to Fulton.
I'm a
You know,
building.
Brick by
don't
brick.
just
Brick by brick.
implode it.
Well, what about the Stockton House? That's right over there too, isn't it? Right next to Circus Flora.
Yeah, Right.
Well, Charlie's right.
It's not in the way.
There are tree huggers. I'm a building hugger, and I
Yeah.
think I've been like that forever though, and you never really regret having said, don't tear it down. No, but I mean, you don't. And I think we do. One of the things about St. Louis, I mean, we're not ancient Rome. Everything's just a couple hundred years old, but we are still.
Except for the ballpark.
Oh, yeah. We are still. We shouldn't underestimate that part of our
Indeed.
Our charm.
Bill McClellan, I want to ask you about a plan by the mayor of St. Louis, Tashara Jones, for voluntary reparations to those who descended from the enslaved. She has said that just to start the conversation, she'd like to get voluntary contributions to kick this effort off. At least the discussion and the dialogue will take place along with that. What are your thoughts?
Well, you know, I would never make a moral argument against reparations, but the reality of it is it's not going to happen. And I wish that former President Obama or somebody would really be in charge of the Democrats and explain to Mayor Jones and others, look, this is not going to happen. All it does is it gives ammunition to our enemies, and it's going to be a little crawl against at the bottom of Fox News about, you know, the city of St. Louis and Los Angeles and some other city pass something in favor of reparations. It's not going to happen. I think there's so many other ways that we can help African Americans and people of color. You know, affirmative action, quotas, help people get jobs that are realistic and possible, and I don't think reparations are possible.
Well, that's easy for you to say because you won't be getting any money, right?
That's exactly.
No, I agree with Bill. And it's just, you know, the energy could go elsewhere. And I don't know what to say other than that. I do agree with you that it just all it does is just rile people up over nothing.
Well, did I read the story correctly that they would take some of the voluntary reparations and apply them to reduced water bills or something like that, and or utility bills? The two. This is the question of slavery, the implications of slavery should be, much deeper than applying some money to somebody's utility bills.
Although that's real help, and that's something that we can do. Like with all this money we're getting from the feds, we can help people with their utility bills, and
so
we
that
can
kind
do
of
things.
reparation.
Well, and if you called it, all right, if you gave it a fancy name, and said like this is your reparation reduction.
Okay.
All right. Then all of a sudden it sounds a little bit different, although I think if I were not in line for a reparation and I had a high electricity bill, I would be kind of like, you know, really? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Well,
I think a much bigger issue of the other, it feels like we're living in different, planets almost.
Universes.
Because half the country is trying to whitewash our history to pretend like slavery didn't even exist, basically.
That's not half
in
the
the
country.
schools.
That's not.
Well, or half.
You're labeling.
The half, I'm talking about the half that, a big part of the Republican Party, let's say, is on this nonsense about critical race theory, is trying to deny one extreme, and I think there's probably a better middle ground to be found.
But if it's voluntary, and I think that's the key word here that the mayor has come upon. She hasn't said that this is going to be a government-funded program.
No,
this
but
is
she wants
voluntary.
She
Right,
wants
the
this
voluntary,
to
it's
serve as a
the
model.
beginning.
She wants it to serve as a model to the feds.
I think
so.
that's okay.
That was.
I don't have a
part of
problem
her-
with what she's doing. I just don't think it's realistically going to make much of a difference.
But now,
Well, we might be talking about this in some part because on Next Up, in the second half of this program, we're going to be talking to Ben Phillips and Dick Weiss and Elkin Kistner, who are going to discuss what should the families who have descended from slaveholders do as some sort of personal recompense, if anything.
Well,
and that's actually what Elkin Kistner's...
I think it's a fair... By the way, when I listen to us talk about it, I think it makes sense to do... I don't have any problem with the spirit. I don't think anybody else is saying they do, but I don't have any problem with the spirit of what she's trying to do. I just don't... I think we're in such a strange place on these kinds of issues, it's not going to make a lot of difference.
You know, Wall Street Journal had a story on Georgetown University, which had about 270 slaves back in the day. And so now they have convened a commission to try and figure out what to do.
Princeton did it also.
Yeah.
And actually pointed out the things that they wanted to change, and they've changed, like the name of the theological school.
And giving money to scholarships to the descendants of the slaves if they can find. That sounds like a great idea.
Well, Ken Feinberg is a professor at Georgetown. He also served as the fellow who handed out the reparations after 9/11, right? And he said, before all this began, he goes, I don't know exactly what should be done, but all I know, it's going to create discord. And it did. It turns out even those who represented the side seeking the reparations cannot agree on what the action should be.
Yeah, that would be the first thing. I mean, if somebody voluntarily gave $20 million tomorrow, okay, you think that would evenly get divided amongst the, you know, people deserving in not only the city of St. Louis, but wherever you live? That would be a show.
It sounds like a Spike Lee movie.
Yeah, that would be a show.
Yep.
Well, I don't want to start anything, but if Georgetown, a Jesuit school, is thinking about reparations, what about St. Louis University, which was built with slaves?
Well,
when's that conversation going to start?
Let's give them a call tomorrow.
Right. No, I think, no, and it is, that part, to me, that's a very realistic way to go about this. With the scholarship, that's a very, I mean, and it isn't like there's any question about the legitimacy.
Said she wanted to do
yeah,
is start the conversation.
And that's why I say I think she should be.
Which I understand.
She's right for doing that.
Let's see what folks had to say about last week's program. Dale wrote, gambling outfits are like any other business. They're in it for the money, and they can't make money unless people lose money. But they make it look like the gambler will win a bundle. Gambling is good for nobody except the gambling institutions and cowardly politicians. Dale from South St. Louis. Greg Mack 517, the people who don't like or support Cori Bush will make a huge mistake overlooking the political machine she built and is constantly building. She tirelessly represents the marginalized in her district. She knows what that's like. You can write us, care of 9PBS, 3655 Olive, 63108. We love those emails, Donnybrook at 9pbs.org, and those tweets, hashtag DonnybrookSTL. Don't forget, you can find us wherever you find your favorite podcast. Thanks so much for joining us for this edition. Stay tuned. We'll talk about the front page story on this week's RFT, when a family finds out ancestors held slaves. That's just around the corner. Don't go away.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.